Hi, I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and I want to show you how you can easily change the fuel pump in your BMW E53 X5 5 Series and a number of other models. Alright y'all, so if you have an older BMW, some parts are starting to fail, and one of those things that can fail is your fuel pump. Now in this case, it actually failed for us out on the road, which is a bit of a drag, but thankfully it's a relatively easy fix, and I'm going to walk you through the whole process. So now these instructions are going to be really good, obviously on an E53 X5, so that's the original X5, but the same generation of 5 Series is essentially identical, and when it really comes down to it, it's not all that different. I mean, if you look at even the most modern cars, the process is almost exactly the same. The pumps will be a little bit different, some of the connections might be a little bit different, but you actually could use these instructions for almost any BMW, but in this case it is going to be that E53 X5. Now this isn't all that hard. I'm going to walk you through the whole process. It only takes a few simple tools, and I always want to stress everything that you need will be listed in the video description below. Tools, parts, anything else like that, torque values, anything you need will be listed there. So if you're looking at it later and you're like, hey, where do I find that tool or where do I find that part? That's how you find it. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the car because the very first thing we're going to do is pull out the back seat. All right, y'all, so one of the very first things you want to do is actually take out your seat base on your back seat. So forgive me as I get in the way here. You just grab it and pull. As you can tell, it comes up nice and loose like that. So you just fit it out and away. Now you can tip it forward. Now in this case, I've got heated back seats, so be careful when you do this so you can see all the cabling. In addition, you can see my sound skins material here as well. So I'm actually going to show cutting that away, or cutting the disc here so I can actually get in here when I get in. But if you don't have that, obviously you'd skip that step. But you can just take the seat base with the middle strap, as you can see, is still attached. So you can just take the seat base and push it forward and get it up out of the way. Now, next thing I'm going to do, I've run my sound skins project and really improved this car as far as road noise. Make sure to check out that video. But in this case, I'm going to skip ahead quickly on that because you may or may not have that done. So I'm going to take my knife and just cut a disc here out of my sound skin so I can take that and lift it up and away. And we'll get to the top of the fuel pressure, or the fuel pump, which I'll show you what that looks like. Now, of course, if you don't have the sound skins, you won't have to cut that out. So normally I can cut out this material and lay it back, but in this case it's stuck down really, really well. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut a shape around. Most of you will not have that same first step like I do, but at the same time, again, make sure to check this out because this makes a tremendous difference in the car. I've actually cut out 10 decibels of road noise in the car, which is huge. But so you've got your cover here with 4 10mm nuts on them, so go ahead and just take off those, and then you'll lift this cover off. We may end up having to clean underneath this as well, but let's go ahead and get this cover off and I'll show you what that looks like next. All right, so once you have those 4 nuts off, you can go ahead and just get underneath this and lift the cover. You probably have a little bit of a seal right here, as you can see with mine is already starting to come off. And you can see where the control line essentially is plugged in. So we're gonna wanna do a couple of things at this stage. One, we're gonna wanna go ahead and unplug this so we can get this cover up and out of the way. You can see your fuel line coming in here as well. And the other thing you can see is it's really dirty. No one's probably been in here since the car was new. So you wanna get a vacuum cleaner, wipe all this out, get it as clean as possible before we take this collar off, and I'll show you how to do that. But to get this plug off, you're just basically going to want to use a pick tool on one side. You're going to lift away with a pick tool, and I'll show you this in just a second, but you lift away and then this plug will come off, then we can get this top cover plate out of the way. All right, really quick addition just so this plug makes a lot more sense. You can see it's got this collar. It was in this orientation, and you just take and push on this collar and it'll slide away, and then the plug will just walk itself right off. Then you can get this up and out of the way right there. So like I said, the next thing you want to do is I take this cover gasket out, and that's just going to be to help keep it quiet. We're going to wipe all of this out. I'm going to use a vacuum cleaner, take and get as much dirt and grime out as I can, and then we're going to talk about taking this fuel line off next. All right, so now that this is, pretty reasonably cleaned up, and mine wasn't too dirty. I've seen some examples that are just awful. So I just used a rag and got it all cleaned up. Now, you're gonna wanna start stuffing some rags around the perimeter here. Now, you don't want them stuck out too much because they're gonna get in the way when you take the ring off. But if you stuff some rags or some paper towels, into these various different crevices back here, you can get this set up because when we pull the fuel line and when we pull the pump itself, we're gonna get some gas spillover, okay? So, and you don't want to get it on your carpet, and you're going to want to take it up and out of the car as quickly as you can. So make yourself a path on how to do that. Now, we're also going to now take this clamp off. So this clamp itself is essentially a single use. With some funky tools, you can get the clamp to come off, but really when it comes down to it, it really is single use. So you can get a pick tool or a flat bladed screwdriver in to the bend here and start prying it free, and you can get it to come out and pry it up and away from the hose. When you do, you're going to get some gas that's going to leak. So you want to be prepared for that with some paper towels, so you can get this up and off. So go ahead and work that clamp off, and like I said, you can also use a very small bladed screwdriver, which this one is not small enough. Okay, but that's how you get that off, and then we're going to work to get the collar off next. All right, so a couple of things here really quickly. So I was able to get a flat bladed screwdriver in and kind of pry this flange away, and as you can see, it's now off these little ratcheting clip marks, and now this is loose. So a couple of cautions really quick. This is on a plastic nipple essentially. Now we're replacing the pump, so you don't have to worry about it as much, but at the same time you don't want to crank on it too hard and break that nipple off, but you should be able to start to work this hose off. Now it's been on for a long time, in this case probably 21 years, so you're gonna have to pry at it a little bit and slowly work at the hose to get it to back up and off. I'm also going to loosen this clamp a little bit more so it's not providing any resistance whatsoever. There we go. You can see it's up and out of the way now, but slowly work this hose off. Make sure that you're prepared for some fuel. I'm going to put a rag down to soak up any fuel that leaks out, and then I'm going to tuck the hose back out of the way so we can get this clamp off. All right, so quick tip. If you have to, you can have this 90-degree pick. I actually worked it up between the plastic nipple and the hose and kind of worked this around the inside perimeter, because I mean this hasn't been off for a long time. So it was on really, really solid. So kind of breaking that seal that it had allowed it to start to move back, and then I moved it back very carefully. Now my fuel pump has failed, so I had very little fuel in here. You may have the same, but be prepared for, you could get a lot, but in this case I'm not getting any more out at all. So I just take my rag, and then you can just take this and kind of tuck it back and out of the way here. Make sure it's a place where you can get to it when we're done. But let's go ahead and look at the collar. Now, the tool that you need to do this is not very much money, and it is kind of the right way to do this. Now, and that tool will be listed in the description. I just got it off of Amazon. It's just a cheap tool, and it locks into this collar and allows us to use a breaker bar to turn this collar. Now, worst case scenario, you don't have access to that. You don't have access to the tool. I'm going to tell you the cheap way of doing it. And it's like a $20 tool. So you can actually take a wide bladed, flat bladed screwdriver, which this is not, but just using this as an example, setting it in against one of these teeth, and then banging a screwdriver into it gently. It'll slowly start to turn counterclockwise, and then you could shift to the next tooth and the next tooth, next tooth until it gets off. Okay, but let me go ahead and grab my specialized tool so I can show you what this looks like, and we'll get this collar off. All right, so here's the tool, and there's a lot of different ways you can use this. I've seen a lot of different tools that work. This has these little sliding arms with these teeth at the end, and you just slide it to an equal distance on each side. These are 12mm bolts here on the top. To slide it to equal distance, tighten down at 12mm at the top, and then just set it like a T or a U down onto this collar with those cutouts on either side of these little teeth. Now you can potentially, and then you stick an extension into the center hole, and then you can use a breaker bar or a pair of pliers, or excuse me, a breaker bar or a wrench, like a ratcheting wrench. It really depends on how tight this is. I've seen it take a breaker bar where it just really have to yard on it, so a really big breaker bar. I've also seen it done with a small wrench, or in some cases it's not all that tight to begin with. So I went ahead and used my breaker bar, kind of broke the seal on this, but really I barely really had to pry on it, and it came loose. So it really was not hard to get out. So now we're just going to feed the fuel pump out. So this is where, again, where you're going to want to set up some rags. You don't want to soak your carpet. I'm going to take it straight out. I'm going to set my camera up. We're going to take it straight out, and we're going to set it out to the outside. You can always lay some plastic down or some rags down, whatever it takes. But this is essentially loose at this point. There's really only pressure keeping this in. The only thing we want to note when we look at this, if you notice that there's a notch. So you look at the orientation of this, it really only goes in one way, but at the same time, just note how it's all set up. This is the back of the car, the front of the car. There's a notch here on the back that goes to the back that fits into this outer collar. Okay, so let me get my camera set up and we're gonna look to take this out. All right, y'all, so different camera angle looking across the car so you can kind of see this as it comes out. Done my best to try to make a path, to not make a mess. Like I said, there's a little bit of a tooth right here on the front of this. This also sits into a gasket, so it is semi-sealed down, so I used very gently, used my screwdriver to pry it up a little bit, but at this point, it should be loose. Now, I've also got the advantage that the gas tank is basically empty. You may not have that's the case. So as this comes out, there's also your level float right here at the end. So you're gonna have to tip it as it comes out so you can get this level float out just like that. Take it out of the car. All right, y'all, so now that that is out, you're gonna wanna go ahead and take your gasket, because you'll have a new one. Go ahead and set that in first and set it into place. And like I said, you're gonna wanna do this relatively quickly. Now, my gas tank is almost bone dry empty, which really, really helps. But especially if you've got a full tank of gas, you wanna crank through this really quickly, okay? So now I've got the new pump right here. As you can see, I had to put the arm on. This is your float. All of this is brand new, but the float only goes on really in one way. So you're just gonna take it and angle it back in the same way that it came out. So just kind of work it down, work it into place. Try not to mess up your gasket as it goes in, okay? And you'll just slowly work it down right back into where it should be, like that. And remember, it's got that same tooth here on one side. So take it and you can just press it down into place just like that. So as you can tell, this really isn't that hard. And man, having that into place already, the gas smell is significantly less, which is really, really nice. Okay, so as you can tell, it's really not that hard. So then you're just gonna take your collar again and walk it right back into place. Now I'm gonna hand rotate this to get it on to make sure that it's threaded nicely. And then I'll take my tool. I'll just take that same tool, fit it right into place with those teeth and tighten it up. And you know, this is metal onto plastic, so it really doesn't have to be all that hard. Okay, so let me get the collar in place, and then we're going to pull the cap here off the nipple. We're going to get the new hose on. You're going to need another small little hose clamp to replace the one that we took off, but we're almost done. All right, now that the collar is down and tight, and I really put it down to just kind of tight snug with the tool. So you've got your fuel line here. I've got a new one of your typical just ratcheting hose clamps. This is a 5 to 12 millimeter hose clamp, and it's just fine, fits just fine. So go ahead and put that on the hose first. Make sure that the worm drive is in a place where you can get to it easily, and then just work it down on there. And then all you're gonna need to do is take a wrench or a screwdriver and go ahead and tighten that down. So go ahead and get that done. Then we're gonna plug it back in and we're almost done. All right, now that that hose clamp is tightened down, so what we're gonna wanna do is we're gonna want to test before we button this all up. Okay, so go ahead and take your plug and just fit it back down into place. It should go right over the top of this plug, and then just close that collar back down. Make sure it's nice and secure. Check your hose here as well. That's very, very secure, so it's just fine. So it should be good to go. Now's your chance to go ahead and start the car up. Go ahead and start it, put it into ignition first. Let this pump prime a little bit, and then go ahead and start it. All right, guys, so forgive a little bit extra light. Got a little cloudy, so it's a little shadowy. But, so when we fire the car up, it frequently can take a little bit to start because it's pressurizing, you know, this whole fuel system to go. But after a little bit, caught up, idled just fine. I let it idle for quite some time, revved it up quite a bit. Went in and drove it just a little bit to make sure everything was doing okay. Also double checked all through here to make sure that we don't have any leaks or anything going on, and it's completely fine. So all you need to do is put this cover back on. Really only kind of goes one way, so if you find that the holes don't line up, just keep turning it, see? And even now, see, it doesn't line up. So just keep turning it until you get it in the position where it does go through. It only goes in one way. Go ahead and put those nuts back on. Lastly, really quickly, this collar is actually 35 Newton meters. It actually says it on the collar, which is kind of cool. But if you did want to torque it down to the proper amount, it's 35 Newton meters. Okay, so go ahead and put the cover back on. Go ahead and put the screws back on. You put your seat back on and just tuck your seat belts back up through the holes in your seat base, and you're all done. Congratulations. All right, all done. Go ahead and clean and put your tools away. And you can tell this really isn't all that hard when it really comes down to it. It just only takes a few simple tools and some time and a little bit of patience and care. You want to make sure you don't get any dirt or debris into your tank, and you make sure you swap in your new pump carefully and get all that done without really making a mess or getting gas all over the inside of your car. But with a few simple tools, this is something you can easily do yourself, save yourself all of that effort and time, and also cost of someone else having to do it for you. Reminder, everything you need will be listed in the description below for parts and everything else, so make sure to check that out. Please click subscribe and the little alarm bell. It makes a huge difference to my channel, as you can imagine, and then you get all the notifications for my upcoming content, and I have a ton of things coming I can't wait to bring to you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'll see you on my next video.